Did you know that on every Windows system there is a local system user account, and that system user account has the capability of bypassing all registry and file system ownership and permissions restrictions? Normally you'll see Windows processes and services using the system account, especially in services.msc. On rare occasion you may see some malware run a system. But we're going to talk about how you can use d7.2 to run your own applications as system and bypass those file system and registry permissions as you need to. This of course is useful in situations where you're fighting malware or backing up data. So let's show you how you can start taking advantage of the local system account with d7.2. Our first option is to use the Run menu, and we have the Run Program option. Run Program will have some pre-populated values in here, regedit being one of the most useful, and you can tick the Force System Account radio button and click Go. Now it will take a second to launch a process's system, and that perhaps is a subject for d7.2 under the hood. Now you'll notice when regedit starts, I'm seeing some keys here that you may not be familiar with. These are the SAM keys that are normally only accessible from the system account. Just to give you an idea of what that's going to look like in a standard run environment, we'll just run it as default, which is administrator, and you can see that there are no branches of the SAM key. You can't access any of that data. So that is just one example of how running something under the system account can bypass registry permissions. We'll just close that, move on to our next option in the Run menu, which is Command Prompt Run as System. And when you run the Command Prompt as System, which I've covered in the Command Line Junkies video, you can essentially run any command through the command prompt, even regedit, and launch any other program to get your system access. Any command that you run from this prompt or any other program will run under the local system account. Go back to our Run menu. We have two more options. We have Restart D7.2, Run as System, and Restart Explorer, Run as System. I'll be honest with you, Restart Explorer right now has a few quirks. It's not working 100%, but the catch is when you run it, it basically just says you need to restart D7.2 as system. Would you like to do this? So essentially that option is kind of there for no reason right now, but I do have plans to patch that up in the future. Now if we do restart D7.2 as system, we'll show you what restarting Explorer as system is all about as well. Okay, now as D7.2 starts up, you'll see here and here that we have system access. So any program that you run from D7.2 now will have system access as well. And of course D7.2 has system access, so it by itself can bypass file system and registry ownership and permissions restrictions. Now we'll restart Explorer. Go back to the Run menu, and just a standard old Restart Explorer or Restart Explorer Run as System will work. Explorer will actually close, and if it's the first time it's happened, you'll see the personalized settings, setting up your user account stuff, and then you'll get some brand new user account stuff popping up. You'll definitely know when Explorer is running a system if you click on the Start button and you notice the username is now system. So now, for example, anything I run from Explorer, like regedit, will have access to the SAM key, for example, or anything else that requires unlimited file system and registry access. I keep leaving things out of this video, so I'm splicing this in. I actually forgot to tell you that of course you can browse the file system and access, say, restricted user accounts or other areas that you wouldn't normally be able to access, and perhaps you can delete files that you wouldn't normally be able to delete when running under the system account. You should note that when you restart Explorer as system, if you need to get Explorer back to a standard user account, you must log off and log back on as that standard user, or simply restart the computer. Now, there are several ways to get D7.2 to start as system by itself without having to go through this. First, in config, we have the startup behavior section, and under D7.2 startup, you have normal startup, Force F8 startup menu, and system mode. System mode will always start D7 under the local system account. I don't recommend this option, and I'll come back to the reasons why in a minute. In the middle, we have Force F8 startup menu. Yeah, D7 has an F8 startup menu like Windows. So if you hold or tap F8 as D7.2 is starting up, you'll get a menu with a prompt where you can also select, one time only, system mode. In this way, you can run system mode just one time and not every time. Now, of course, you can access the F8 menu by pressing F8, or you can just enable the F8 menu always here. Once D7.2 is running under the local system account, you can do some pretty neat things with it, like, for example, data operations, data grab. Data grab, when running under the local system account, does not need to take ownership or permissions of any restricted user accounts in order to back up data from them. So that is the biggest benefit of running in system account and using it with data backup. Unfortunately, other programs like Fab's Auto Backup do not run under the local system account. I actually wanted to talk to Fabrice about this, I just haven't yet, but there's got to be a good reason for it. Now let's talk about using the system account with malware removal. First, internal D7 functions, like for example delete temp and temp internet files, these will work on all system accounts, even restricted user accounts, of course, because of the system access. And naturally, any other program will be able to do the same thing. This can benefit some programs if they didn't otherwise have access to other user accounts. Unfortunately, with malware scanner programs, there isn't much of an advantage to running under the local system account because you can confuse these malware scanners by doing so. The largest problem with this is that some malware scanner programs rely on information that they find in the file system or in the registry to track down other components of malware. For example, a scanner program may find a particular registry entry that points to a file. So now the malware scanner knows where the file is in addition to the registry entry. The system profile now is located under HKey current user in the registry. The malware scanner program may not find the malicious entries in HKey current user because that wasn't the user account that got infected. Therefore, it may not find the file system component of that malware either. So you may want to avoid running that malware scanner under the system account, as it may not do the best job. On the other hand, if you're having trouble removing some malware that you can identify, it's always worth a shot trying the scanner under the system account. I want to show you one last option to run some apps in the system account, and this way you can run only apps in the system account and not D7.2 or not every app that D7.2 launches. So for example, if you know one particular app runs well under the system account, you can just configure that app to run under the system account and nothing else. And we would do this by going to config, or if, for example, you have an app out somewhere, like this app for example, you can go configure app function, and actually this is a bad example because it's a default app and you can't modify that setting on a default app because we need to actually maintain those to some consistency. But if you were to make a copy of it, you could modify that, or if you had your own app, you can modify that. But essentially what you're going to do is move to the execution tab on the custom app that you want to run as system, and just go down and check the run as system checkbox, and then of course you want to save it. I hope this video has given you a brief primer on what the system account is and how you can use the system account to your benefit.